Okay, thanks, Hollis. We'll bring the meeting to order. I've got to get my glasses on here so I can see. We have enough people here for a quorum, and we have no visitors tonight. Are there any conflicts of interest that anyone would like to bring forward on the articles of the agenda this evening? Pretty limited. Thank you. The next thing is to adopt the agenda. If I could have someone move that the agenda be adopted as presented. So moved. Winston, seconder. Wade, thank you, Wade. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Tonight we just have one article on the agenda, and that is the presentation, Vision 2023. This is basically going to focus on how the changes that we're living through right now will affect the RSC 10. And so that's where we're going to be focusing this evening. And with all that, I'll hand it over to Hollis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, folks, I won't blather on too long, but as the Chair alluded to, this is going to be focused on changes as they relate to Regional Service Commission coming up that I'm aware of at this point in time. I've had several conversations with different government officials, a lot with the department and other executive directors and other folks in the past few weeks. It's been certainly a topic of interest. One of the main points is that there's still going to be a lot of details to be worked out. We don't know all the details. We don't have a detailed plan at this point in time. That's going to happen during our transition period. So, in the mandates, the new mandates that are coming to the Regional Service Commission, there's recreation, tourism, economic development, community development, public safety, and that's in the form of a new public safety committee that we need to form. And I've missed one point on here, which is transportation. For certain, this is going to be happening. This is what we are going to be doing, and the province has been clearly communicating that, at least on these points, they're not going back. So other changes that are happening is we have new communities and new boundaries to our region. There's the loss of Harvey, Manor, Sutton, and that's going to RC 11. The newly created La Pearl Musquash municipality, which extends our region further east. There's the St. George, Blacks Harbor, Penfield, Back Bay, etc. municipality, or whatever that ends up looking like. I don't know what the final result there is going to be, but St. Stephen expansion, and that St. Stephen is doubling in size pretty well. St. Andrews expanding right up to the highway. And then the new rural district created of all the leftover LSD stuff. From what I understand, there's still opportunity for fine-tune of boundaries, and the maps that I was given, which they told me I couldn't give to the public, certainly were very rough and had solid lines across that didn't make a lot of sense. So there's going to be a little bit of geography as we go forward. Major changes, I'm not sure. I don't have the answer for that.
Got a quick question. Yeah, without asking. How soon is this going to be passed?
Pardon me?
How soon will all this be passed? Just to make it.
Well, actually, that's on what I'm doing right
Okay,
now.
I'll wait for it.
So we're into the second reading of Bill 82 now, and actually scheduled for all day today and tomorrow. The Standing Committee on Economic Policy was meeting with the only thing on their agenda being Bill 82. So best guess would be that they want to get this passed before get the third reading before Christmas, would be my guess. They, you know, so they start the new year. But you'd have to ask those that are actually debating and voting on it when it's actually going to happen. But that's where it is. I checked on today on Bill 82. It's been debated 3 separate days under second reading, and then today all day was a committee meeting. So some other unknown stuff is garbage boundaries. I was asked by Mander Sutton, is there garbage? They had heard that their garbage was still going to be coming to us. I didn't think that was the case. So I checked with the department, I checked with Ryan Donahue, and he said that that's going to be determined during the transition. So also leads me to the question of, you know, will Musquash, LaPro, will their garbage be coming to our landfill? I don't know, because they're almost next door to Crane Mountain, St. John. So that's something that's got to be determined. The final form of the act, I don't know, because it's still being debated and it's still in its second reading. Funding sources for our new mandates are a little bit unknown. I don't have a clear direction on where that money comes from to do all this new stuff. I do know that it's not all coming from property taxes. So there's a variety of sources of funding for different things. So it's going to get a lot more complex where this money comes from, but I don't have I can't tell you that we're going to get X from here and X from here, and what our budget's going to look like for these things. I don't know. The other thing is the regulations, and I think it was Andrea Mason said something about the devil being in the details, and she's absolutely right. So the regulations that are going to be associated with this act, we think are going to be out in January. Not 100% sure there. But those regulations are almost going to be more important than the Act, Bill 82. When I go to when I have to refer to a Regional Service Delivery Act now or anything like that, I always land on the regulation, which is 2012-109. I know off by heart now, because of, you know, because that's where you find all the actual fine detail of information. So that hasn't been released yet. I don't think it's been written yet. I mean, I'm sure it's been drafted, but I don't think it's been finalized yet. So that's where we are with that. So other changes that are coming up that concern the Regional Service Commission. PPP, still hanging out there. We still don't know what that program is going to look like yet. And we've been back and forth a little bit. I was in with other regional service commissions and the government on this, on the solid waste strategy that they want to come up with, which is tied to, it's partially tied to PPP, but it's also tied to a lot of other things. And so the new solid waste strategy, they want out by March 31st, 2022. Now, I asked the specific question, is there any legislation that's coming out immediately after tied to this? Are we going to be doing different things according to, and the answer was no. There might be little bits and things that come out afterwards down the road, but there's no specific legislation coming out with the strategy. However, it was just yesterday that Department of Waste Diversion, or the branch of waste diversion from Department of Environment and Local Government, which is an odd thing, had a meeting with myself and Mike and Trish, and we were talking about this. They wanted our individual input. I think I had a moment where I may have gone a little overboard with them, because there was a lot of, you know, they're looking for, you know, uniform service delivery across the province, organics diversion, things like this. And I said, so we can't all do the same thing, because we're all different. Like, you know, we're not St. John or Moncton. Like, we have to approach things differently here. It was about an hour and a half, and I shut up after a while talking to them. They got a little heated, but I think they got my point, that we're not, you know, it can't be all the same. And they agreed with that, you know, we have to have different approaches in each region for these things. I said, you are a waste diversion branch. Waste diversion branch, it's actually in your name, waste diversion. So your primary purpose is waste diversion. You need to answer me why. Why are we diverting? If we're taking stuff out of one pile and putting it in another pile, it's going to cost taxpayers twice as much money. Why would we do that? What is it you're accomplishing? And I didn't get a good answer to that. And they got a little mad at me, but it is what it is. So building inspection changes. Department of Public Safety, that has yet to come because, as you know, building inspectors used to be under environment local government. Last year they were changed to public safety. So all of the stuff we've been talking about for local government's reform and changes have been from environment local government. So they couldn't speak specifically to public safety, but they did indicate to me that yes, there are changes, and I have heard, and Alex, you might even have better information on the changes coming up for building inspection. And then finally, healthcare reform. As you know, there was something rolled out recently. It didn't have a lot of teeth, didn't really talk about a lot, but I think the very fact that people in this room got together and formed a committee anyway and just said we're going to fix it ourselves speaks to what we do in our region. So.
Can I ask one question about the PPP?
Sure.
Just, you know, as an individual who's using packaging printed paper, like corrugated trays for plants, and I know there are two suppliers, two manufacturers in New Brunswick. Are there any requirements that are coming down the pipeline that the little tray that I'm buying from one of the suppliers in St. John needs to have now a special seal on it?
To be determined. It depends on the size. If you were under $2 million or something like that, if you're a very small supplier of print, paper and printed packaging, I think you're exempt from the program. It doesn't apply to ICI, so it doesn't apply to commercial or industrial. It's only consumer stuff. So, you know, again, the details are much less clear with PPP than they are with local government's reform at this point. So, rough timeline. So January 2022, the transition teams will be in place. And I have some really good news about this. I don't know who's in our region. And as far as the transition teams go, the transition people that we get for regional service commissions are different than for municipalities. So they're going to have like one transition person for every 2 or 3 regional service commissions, and then municipalities will have somebody completely different. I thought it was going to be a region-wide thing, but that's not how it's going to roll out. However, the leader of the transition team for the province, and this is for everything, including municipalities and regional service commissions, is, and I just found this out Friday, is going to be Gerard Belleville. Gerard is currently the executive director of the Southeast Regional Service Commission. He's got years, he's spent his entire career in municipal working. He was city manager for Moncton and or Dieppe, can't remember. He is a professional planner, and he's been running that service commission since they started. Just a very, very knowledgeable guy. He helped write some stuff. He knows Jean-Guy Finn. He helped write some of the policy stuff that's happened over the last 20 years with reform. He's also, why I was so happy about this, why this took a lot of stress off me, is because he's a friend of ours, number one. I trust him completely, number two. He's as honest as the day is long. So, you know, that they would pick somebody like that, I'm just really happy about that, because that just means that it certainly wasn't a political appointment. Gerard's a big liberal, so.
Yeah, who's he asked to?
Maybe it is a political appointment because there are a lot of horses being traded now.
Well, I won't argue that. So by around July, the entire plan should be in place for transition. I suspect it'll be earlier than that. And then November 28th, we have municipal election. So this is very rough and broad, subject to change. So Vision 2023. So the question is, how do we take advantage of what's going on? Looking at this in a positive light. My friend Don Fitzgerald loves to say this one, never waste a crisis. So let's take a look at what's happening and how do we position ourselves in a good way so we have a good outcome. So a lot of local governance reform is RSC 2.0. Other than, you know, the municipality boundaries changing and things like that, a lot of it is I mean, about half of it is concentrated on service commissions. So this is our opportunity to reimagine it, reinvent the Regional Service Commission, renew it, be better, and by be better, I don't mean be better than other people, or be better than other regions. I mean better than what we were yesterday, be better than who we used to be, and be leaders. So, one opportunity, this is our opportunity to rebrand this organization. Our current brand, Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission, which is often called Service New Brunswick, and it gets mixed up all the time. It's a very old entire thing. The graphic part of it, the logo part of it, is actually the Solid Waste Commission. They just replaced the letters. They didn't even change the font. And so, you know, and that was 25 years ago. It's old, it's tired. There's no regional in our name. Every other service commission, every other regional service commission has regional as part of their name. I think regional is an important part of our identity. So one direction, South Shore Regional Service Commission. So this really speaks to our identity a lot better than the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission. It's modern, it's progressive, it's relevant to the new mandate, and it better reflects who we are. But this also, by doing a rebrand, and maybe it isn't this, and maybe it doesn't look like this, because, you know, I have done branding work in my past lives. However, I'm going to hire, you know, somebody that does this for a living to actually do our rebrand. Should you decide to go ahead with that? But what this does during local governance reform, during all the changes, it announces to all the citizens in our region that we are evolving, and evolving significantly. So I think maybe that's something to take under serious consideration. So, in the documentation, there's a regional strategy due by 2023. But the foundation for that, if not almost all of it, should be done by the end of 2022. You know, so we may have most of this done, you know, well before then. So in our new mandates, the recreation, tourism, transportation, community development, economic development, these are all branches of the same tree. And these things all work better when they are centralized. And there's crossover. So, you know, we get economy of scale. We don't duplicate overhead and, you know, administration costs and things like that when we run all of these under one roof. So under recreation, we're already halfway there. So we're already way ahead of the rest of the province here. In fact, a lot of stuff that you've seen in the local governance reform was taken from what we did. However, the current policy needs to be reimagined in 2022 because, you know, municipalities all changed, boundaries all changed. The current plan we have is going to remain in place for 2022. That's what was voted on. But this is our chance to kind of test it out and find flaws and troubleshoot it, and then come out with completely realigned for 2023. So tourism is a big opportunity for our region if we do a regional promotion of tourism. So the South Shore region becomes the premier destination in New Brunswick. It's not a drive-through region, it's a destination. You know, if we have cohesive branding and promotion and billboards and consistent signage, you know, signs for attractions that are consistent with our brand, online advertising, printed guides, it should make a big impact, I would think. But this also, tourism itself, also supports recreation, because a lot of it is recreation, economic development, community development, transportation. All those things are supported by transportation. So I'm going to give you an example. Don't know if it's going to happen. It's something I thought about. If we figured out that maybe there'd be a good opportunity to put a water park somewhere in our region. Maybe we put it up in Walloway, maybe we put it, I don't know where. We figure out what that is, but we look at that and somebody says, yep, there's a business case for putting a water park in our region. That also leads to economic development. That also leads to community development. That also leads to answers and opportunities for transportation initiatives. And that also leads to, you know, certainly recreation, obviously, for our residents. Because if you look at it this way, recreation is what our residents do, and tourism is what people that don't live here do. But they can both be doing the same things. So that's just kind of one example. Our unique selling proposition in this region, I said it, I've lived here for almost 10 years now. I know my name is Bartlett, and I live in Bartlett's Mills, but I didn't grow up in Charlotte County. But I've lived here for almost 10 years, and I was amazed when I moved here from Cumberland County at just how awesome this region was. I mean, there's so many unique little pockets of different people, different communities. There's just the diversity here in terms of that type of thing is astounding. I think we live in one of the most beautiful parts of New Brunswick, and we don't take advantage of it. We have a unique selling proposition here with beaches, with our coastline, with the islands. The amount of campgrounds here is kind of, you can speak to Alex, you can tell me how many campgrounds we got. It's growing at a phenomenal pace. We also have some of the best weather in New Brunswick. So we've got some stuff that I think we need to start talking about to people that people don't know about. So that's where I think tourism will play a big part in our new region.
Paulus, just a question on you. Did they give any insight into what that could look like? Meaning, the Charlotte Coastal Regional Tourism Association already supposed to be doing all of that stuff.
Right.
Would that not become a redundant organization, or is that organization the one that the Regional Service Commission would be going through?
Excellent question.
I figured I had to ask it, but devil in the details.
Yes. I talked to this a little bit later on, and it's not just about those guys. So transportation, so plans there are to be determined. I think it's going to bounce off a lot of the community development, economic development stuff that we do, and I think that can be supportive of that. But it's possible to work with some existing regional partners here. So we have, for instance, Dial Ride. We have Eastern Charlotte Waterways that has a car sharing service they're getting off the ground, or trying to get off the ground. Some of the ideas have been tossed around in transportation have been a rural Uber style service. So again, that works to be determined. Community development. So ESIC, Economic Social Inclusion Corporation, it's a Crown corporation. They currently provide funding to all of the community inclusion networks around the province, or whichever region has one. In our region, that would be Vibrant Communities. In some parts of the province, they don't have them, they're just functional, they're not operating. So it's kind of to be determined how we're going to approach this one. But the ultimate result is it's going to lead to better information, so we know what, if it's, say we signed an MOU with Vibrant Communities to continue on their work, that MOU is going to come with reporting requirements, with metrics to meet, with things like that. So it's going to include that. But what we want to do is not handcuff community development and duplicate administration. So we need to have the conversation about whether or not that becomes an in-house service.
What exactly is community development?
So vibrant communities, it's about poverty reduction, it's about, they are the ones that actually provide funding to Dial-A-Ride at the moment.
So social enterprise, what they call social enterprises?
Yeah, so, yeah, so it's like economic development except without the starting business part. It's everything else, so support of multicultural, support of inclusion, support of newcomer, one piece of it is newcomers. So welcoming newcomers, how do newcomers navigate the complex government systems when they arrive here from, say, Ontario? We hear that complaint a lot. So maybe we can find a good way of doing that. Things like that. I had a meeting with ESEC. Well, it wasn't me, it was me and all the other executive directors when we were talking about this. They are excited about this. They are excited about moving forward with regional service commissions. And they said, we don't have to wait. We can do this tomorrow if we want to. There's no need to waiting until 2023 for that. So economic development, similar, delivery model to be determined. There's no regional service that currently exists for economic development. There used to be, it was called Enterprise. Yeah, that used to be it. Those were dissolved. I know that there are localized ones, like Future St. Stephen, like CDEC. Of course, CDEC does community development too, right? Yeah. So I know that there are localized ones, but there's no regional delivery model. So this is something that's going to require some work for us to figure out what that looks like.
What do we do with the ones that are in place now?
Well, again, that's part of that conversation. Maybe St. Stephen needs to maintain that. Or maybe they decide that they don't want to, they want to throw in with the Regional Service Commission, do it regionally. That's going to be up to the various municipalities, and where St. Stephen's doubling in size. You know, and St. Andrews is getting, you know, like you have a development group here, right, in St. Andrews?
We do, we don't. Not specifically, just when you get into economic development now.
Okay. So, again, so these are opportunities where we can reinvent, you know, we are reinventing the Regional Service Commission, it's true, but, you know, municipalities might want to take a look at how they're doing things, and maybe they want to do it differently, maybe they want to do it bigger. You know, maybe St. Stephen runs a big economic development group and we just sign an MOU with that. Or maybe it's the other way around.
How does all this get paid for?
So, excellent question.
Next slide.
Good lead.
So, it's not all going to come from an expanded cooperative regional budget. There's a lot of different sources of funding available in the province. To give you a bunch of acronyms, so we got RDC, PEDAL, ONB, ACOA, ESIC, and there's others. I have also heard unofficially that for transition, there's a pot of money, unnamed. I don't know how much is in it, or what the requirements are to get it, but there is money set aside. Hopefully it's significant enough to you know, help us launch some stuff. I don't know, I don't know the answer to that.
Until the next election.
I would just say with the community development, for example, I was with the Vibrant Communities for a while, so what they would get, they get an operational grant and grants for them to disperse in the community as the local nonprofit saw fit at addressing poverty reduction needs. So my assumption, and also know more than I would on this, but would be that that money is not going away. I don't think they're getting defunded and it's being downloaded to the local taxpayer. I think that money will still exist, because there's no sign that they got defunded. I just think that money's just gonna go through.
It's just gonna flip to us.
So
In fact, that's what I was.
So I would have to, in turn, sell a business case to the Regional Service Commission for Economic Development, and prove my business case, and then I can get that money instead of working with the province. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah,
Or on top of that, Mayor McEacher, does that mean that then the Regional Service Commission has to go to Opportunities New Brunswick
Yes.
and plead the case, and then it's a great big telephone game essentially? Or are they just gonna automatically, all these associations allocate money to each regional service?
I don't think, no, see, we're not getting all of the money for economic development. We're only getting the regional economic development money. If there's local economic development that's already happening, that doesn't come through us. Make sense?
Yeah, so, I mean, economic development just doesn't happen. You sometimes have to plan and put infrastructure in place and support that. Where's that money coming from?
Don't know.
An observation that a lot of this funding, which may come into the new entity of RSC, relates with a lot of programs that came, a lot of check writing activity that happened during COVID, like payroll and all that kind of, a lot of money that came through that transition, kind of a crisis management. Let's pump money into the economy so it will not collapse or something like that. So is there assumption there that this abundance of federal generosity is going to continue in the next years? Is there a big assumption there?
It's a big assumption. However, certain things like what Alex was referring to, so currently like Vibrant Communities, for instance, are funded through, what's the acronym?
ESIC.
ESIC, thank you. I think it's $168,000 a year or something. So instead of them writing a check to them, they're going to write a check to us, and then where we go with that depends. So this isn't really new money. It's shuffling around with money where it goes.
So
They're downloading to this Regional Service Commission. You know, they want to funnel all of these kind of things through a Regional Service Commission. So there's one central location that's governed by the local leaders.
But there needs to be more money than, like, you're saying that, you know, the 168,000, they just write you the check instead of them. But you have to administer it. So
Yep.
now you have to hire staff
Yeah.
Yep.
to look after that staff. So it's not an efficiency, it's duplication.
Well, one thing
Or it can't be viewed that way.
Well, see, what happens is you have a lot of these organizations that have their own boards, and they have their own admin people, and they have their own payroll set up, and they have all these things. So if we eliminate all of those things, the efficiency is gained because we already have that stuff in place, so that the executive director of Vibrant Communities doesn't have to spend half his time on governance, doesn't have to spend half his time on just administration stuff.
I did that role, and I can tell you firsthand, had this kind of thing been in place, that would have been amazing, because that role, you're constantly fighting your battle between your own administration of running a board and a nonprofit, your own finances, in addition to having to do all the community development workshops with communities, working with nonprofits to help with capacity building, granting, and all that stuff. If I could spend all the time there as opposed to the administration side, it would be excellent. And I think there's a huge, for the one part I know, I think this is really good.
Will it be more efficient, more outcome?
Yeah, I 100% think that, yeah.
Yeah, well, I would disagree with that, but it just seems a little vague and simplistic. You know, there's got to be a lot more.
What we gotta be careful of is our government, our local government's gotten larger, so it can get too government and get too heavy. So we gotta rule it all forward.
I think there's some risk with this too. If you look at, no matter what, if it's federal or provincial, whether it be a designated highway program where you get money from the provincial government or you get gas tax, there's not a lot of back and forth when they cut that. And if they cut this budget, and then all of a sudden we're the ones dealing with the organizations, we are the ones that are cutting organizations in our communities. And You see the
Yep.
concern here? Like
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
we're the bad guys.
But that's historically what a regional service commission has been. We're the guys that take care of the garbage, take care of, send the mean building
It's an
inspectors.
honorable mission to excel at that. But I just want to ask what problem the government is trying to solve by passing on economic development to regional service commissions? Right now, every business in Brunswick can apply to a co-op. There is a program that is out there, and every business can write to a co-op, do a qualified, this is my project, funding. What is the benefit of actually creating an extra middle point to actually disperse that money, other than additional administration and additional costs?
Well, the economic development piece isn't super expensive, or it doesn't have to be. But there is benefits. I don't think that as a regional economic development piece, we would be like taking trips and trying to import people from other countries to, South Shore, New Brunswick. We wouldn't be doing that. We'd be more the people newcomers that do come, say, I don't know, I'm not an economic development expert either, so. But the point is that it really wouldn't be that expensive, but it is an economy of scale. It is something they've had in the past a couple of times. There were benefits to it, but as a separate government-run organization, it didn't do that well. The people that are going to import people to South Shore New Brunswick would be ONB. And maybe this economic development person works closely with ONB in securing, if they've got opportunities, people that are looking for setting up shop in New Brunswick, this person says, hey, we've got opportunity, we've got infrastructure in place, we've got some property available, we have some whatever it is that they're looking for, and that's where they fit in.
So, economic development, I mean, don't get me wrong, we got a great system in St. Steve, but it's not just one guy doing it.
No.
The board is what makes that future St. Stephen president very powerful and educated, and there's so many different skill sets. So I'd hate to see us lose. I mean, you talk about who goes overseas and gets that thing. Well, there's someone around the table that has that connection, and we make sure we form a board that's qualified to do that. So I hate to see. I don't want to lose that.
The model could be, Alan, and it could be that it is the board of directors of the Regional Service Commission, or it could be that it's a separate board that oversees this economic development piece. That kind of makes sense to me, actually.
Same for tourism.
Same tourism.
Elected mayors or RSC, they're not necessarily in tourism. They can't make the best decisions, and you might not be in business. You
Or
can't
have
make the
time.
best business decisions. So standalone committees makes the most sense, actually.
Yeah. Of experts in that particular
Exactly.
field, yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So moving on, so governance, just a couple of pieces about the governance. So our model's going to change, obviously, for governance, because we're going from 17 directors to 8. And the bylaws, which Jim and I and Annette worked so hard on for a year and a half, are going to be ripped to pieces and kind of redone in a lot of ways. One suggestion I had for going to 8 with doing so many more things is maybe we get rid of standing committees altogether and replace it with 2 board meetings a month, you guys do that, right? I think that makes more sense and it saves a lot of communication problems back and forth. And we still strike subcommittees and we still do those kinds of things, but I think that all of the standing committees added to the board meeting a month, added to the fact that 7 out of 8 are going to be mayors and already have their own councils and their own stuff. We can't ask people to staff that many committees. So anyway, it's just one concept to be determined, of course. So during the coming year, I just want to manage a couple of manage some expectations here. This current board is likely going to go into caretaker mode at some point. This board is not going to be approving the 2023 budget. That will be done by the transition team. Probably gonna have to stop meeting after the October meeting, because then there's an election in November. But I would also expect changes like on a very regular basis in the next few months, as some of these details get worked out. Some of our meetings might be a little bit erratic, in terms like we may have, I know we do for Thursday, but you know, we may need to do extra meetings in here and there. It's going to, like, there's going to be some, it's going to be a little different over the next year. I think a large portion of our board meetings are going to, this is the topic, is the changes and how we are adapting to them. And I would expect our transition team to be a part of those meetings.
You talk about the date, I mean, you probably heard of this before, but in November, all those municipalities are trying to approve a budget of their own. But that budget has to be set to work with that year.
The RSC budget still gets approved at the same time, just not by this board. The board will still be in place, but the budget won't be approved
I
by
don't
this
know
board.
what you're gonna want from my area.
He's talking in the future, I think, right?
Yeah.
After this happens.
But when I set a budget for the next year, that's,
Well,
then all of a sudden you come to me, oh, you need $100,000 to feed this pot.
I didn't come up with that.
No,
Just so you know.
I'm asking a question, I already kind of know the answer, but I want to hear what the others are thinking of that.
I know where you're coming from on the municipality side. Normally by the 15th of November, your budget is supposed to be into the provincial government for their review and approval. And a lot of the stuff that happens at RSC 10, garbage collection, that kind of stuff, feeds into that budget. So there will be a delay, I suppose, if you want to put it that way, in getting the budgets approved at the municipal level. Because the election is not until, what, the end of November?
November 28th.
Right. So it's going to cause.
Our budget has to be in by November 1st.
It's going to cause a little bit of consternation at the municipal level.
Should that be the transition money come from now? I asked you about that contribution, right? We already set our budget on the old price. Now we're gonna have to steal Rob from Peter to pay Paul to, I'm assuming that was for this year, that amount, right?
Yep.
So our budget was set on the old amount, nobody told us the difference. So it's the same thing as what he's saying. What happens if St. Stephen sets their budget for this and then all of a sudden you guys or these guys or us or whatever need more money, then you either gotta go back to the drawing board or you gotta take it from somewhere else.
I suspect that the RSC budget may be set earlier than November 1st, just for that particular reason, but it's an excellent point, and I think it's something that really needs to be talked about with the transition team, that, I mean, municipalities, I know Campbell's not changing, you know, and I know there's 4 of you in this room that are guaranteed to come back, you know, Bonnie, Brad, and Ken. But other than that, you know, the other municipalities, I think there's a lot of work to do there. I mean, St. Andrews, you've got a whole bunch of stuff you're adding in there. St. Stephen even more. And I don't even know what's gonna happen down in St. George. Like there's, you know, there's,
Yeah, I can see where some of this is all right, but I don't know where they had to, now you're taking this room and put more work on 8 people. Right? You see what I'm saying? The whole work, like, I missed a meeting a couple of weeks ago, I slipped my mind, or a couple of meetings ago. That's how busy I am as a person, let alone this job that I took on for whatever reason I did it for, you know what I mean? It definitely wasn't the pay, so now you're gonna be lucky to have a quorum sometimes, I never even had a quorum before.
yeah, no, I sympathize with it.
Government works in strange ways.
So could it be that we just do our budgets and this money, this transition money that's sitting in a pile somewhere, that'll help pad and save the day?
We should know what the transition money is earlier in the year than, you know, probably summertime. I mean, probably by June, I would think. We know how we're paying for this stuff.
The provincial budget that's gonna accommodate this is gonna come out when?
Hopefully.
Like normally provincial budget is a big thing, right? The kind of thing that governments fold or not fold, you know. Is there any schedule when this thing is gonna come? Because we are a subsidiary part of this big budget.
Provincial budget, well, I don't know. I can't really comment on the provincial budget because
No one depends, they find out how much feds are gonna give them.
As we, I think the main point is, as we move forward through this, I spoke to Glenn about this the other day. As we move through this, it'll become more apparent, I think, how much money and where the pot is. The provincial government is going to want to have some victories out of this, some wins that they can showcase. If we find out where the money is and how we as a region can showcase a victory or a success story in that, I think that would be a very positive thing for us to try and accomplish. And that way we'll get something out of it as a region, and the province will get their victory. So it's, I think we just have to remain agile and stay attuned to what's going on, and then take advantage where we can, and try to avoid any pitfalls along the way.
Like we do have problems, real problems in our communities. And a lot of these things, some may accuse us, or accuse the architects, of being solutions instead of a problem. Like for the economic development, I'm not really sure what we try to solve that is not already working, why it cannot work out. Similar some other like inclusion programs. Inclusion is a great initiative. The province is all for it, you know, we are getting bigger population. Fundamentally, it can be much bigger than St. George or the southwest area. So we are actually getting some additional things to do. But we do have a big problem, for example, with healthcare, which we started talking as a committee the other time. We do have that a real problem, and people are actually knocking at doors now and saying, "Where is my doctor?" So I'm a bit concerned that, like, just if I can echo some of the comments I'm getting, people are concerned about building a structure which is going to cost money for providing a solution to a problem that's not fully defined. Like a lot of these things are. Like, no, I mean, McKenna a couple of years ago had the Day Adventure Center for New Brunswick, which is a building Day Adventure Center. And right now we have, you know, the ruins to actually manage. Say, we're going to shade it out or what we're going to do with it. So there is a lot of apprehension. If I want to pass you a message, there is a lot of apprehension now.
I'm sure.
One of the things that I would like to see from the economic development perspective is I think right now St. Stephen does its thing, St. Andrews, Black Harbor, all of our communities are doing their own thing. There's things going on in Macadam. I know there's things going on in St. Stephen and St. Andrews. I think what I would like to see happening is we not work in silos. We sit down as a group and we say, okay, what have you got going on? How am I going to benefit from that? Are you going to need workers from my community to go to your community? What skill sets are you going to need? Like, these are all conversations. Yeah, I know we're having problems in St. Stephen, St. Andrews getting land from the provincial government. We as a group, if we sat down and said, okay, this is economic development, this is what we need to see happen. It's not Brad going, it's not Al, or it's not me going as singletons to the provincial government, to Kathy, and getting down on one knee and saying, please help me. We go as a region and we say, we need your help, and this is why we need it. It's an orchestrated response, a collective response, and that's pretty hard to back away from, whereas they can play us off one against the other. If we act in unison, I think we can make it work for ourselves.
So, 2022 is going to be opportunity. There's about 60 years of experience. Maybe I probably underestimated that when you combined. But this is the opportunity for the people that are here to shape this commission, this region, to be the best asset it can be, because that's what it is. And the changes don't start January 1, 2023. And this is kind of the important message here. They happen during 2022, and then some of them can happen right away. You all here will be a part of that change, and this is a lot to ask, because like I said, there's only 4 of you that are coming back here for sure. But this is a historic moment. We haven't had this kind of change in over 50 years. And you should be able to take a lot of pride in what it is you end up accomplishing over the next year. So I want to preface this with one thing. This is me, this is my writing. This wasn't adopted by this board. This is just my vision. You can feel free to take that. But that by January 21st, or January 1st, 2023, Service Commission will transform into a much more valuable asset for the region. It will be a high-performing organization that is dedicated to enhancing the lives of its residents and making the region a vibrant, attractive place to visit, live, work, and grow. So a little revamping of our current vision. And that's where I'm going to leave you.
Thank you very much, Hollis. Any other questions?
I have a couple of comments, Ken, if you don't mind. Go ahead. I'd just like to know whether everybody in this room, have you gone back and looked at the April meeting of 2021, when the minister was here? You've gone back and listened to what he told us and to what is happening today. Also, one of the members that's on our committee brought it to my attention. I hadn't seen it, but it was on the CBC or CBS. The minister was on there and said that it was 93% of the people of New Brunswick were in favor of the way that this white paper has come out. Now, I just want to ask if all of you people here are in favor of the way that this has been done. I, for one, am not. He told us we were going to have meetings. We had one meeting here in April. He was going to come back. We never seen him again. We had one meeting with 6 LSDs were all that was allowed to attend in St. Stephen. So that constituted that he contacted the LSDs in our RSC. To me, that don't compute. His figures don't work out, in my estimation.
So instead of answering that question, what should we do?
We should have had a meeting right quickly as soon as that white paper come out, and we've seen a copy of it. And as a regional service commission, put in our thoughts on it. And mine would have been, no, we do not want this white paper the way it stands. We know that there's got to be change, but not the way they're doing it. They've got nothing in place. They think they have.
Let me simplify your point. 93% they claim that they're in favor. If we ask in this room, is there any person in favor about the process as it has said right now? We are 3 days before the third reading of the legislation. Is there anyone around this table, around here, happy that somehow he was properly consulted? He may not get what he wanted, but was there a process after the white paper came out until the second vote in Bill 82 that were given the opportunity to participate and talk? Is there anyone that would say that has happened?
Where's the 93% come from? That's
That was his
93% of the people that he talked to,
oh,
not the population, just who he talked to.
His wife?
And he's still full of you know what.
But my feelings on it, that we should have been, as a regional service commission, when it came out, we should have been putting our views to the minister, not to the deputy minister, to the minister.
You'd have got the same answer, because Ryan would have been the one to answer.
This is why it's being pushed through quickly, so that they don't have to respond. And that was planned from the start. So all the consultations they had, that was just fluff, right?
Smoke screen.
So, and you can see what the group up north there, the Association for LSDs is, they're doing whatever they can do, and they've complained, but they're not even listening to them, they're not getting any responses. So this is gonna get railroaded through, and that was the intent from the start. So, anyway,
I think there's a benefit to have buy-in from the local leaders.
well, there is, but, you know, at this point in time, because there's no election coming up, and this is why they're doing it, we don't have any leverage, right?
And you're also in a very dangerous situation, as I mentioned to you earlier, John, is they want this implemented, but they expect, in your situation, and all of our situations, is to help implement it, but also knock your own foot. You know, you gotta try and get elected by the whole, but you gotta pick a side. And it is very dangerous, very dangerous.
And what Hollis said about being proud of how this turns out, it depends on how it turns out. I mean, we could all be, you know, shitheads when this is all done, because we were part of this.
Yes.
Because we're not gonna have a whole lot of say into how that looks. My guess is 90% of it's already structured, and we're gonna get told, the transition team is gonna railroad that through. They'll have a few little things we can, you know, say we want, but most of it's probably already done.
Oh, it's obvious, it's right there. That's all, it's all done, it's right there on the board. If it wasn't, you wouldn't have that information.
So you're absolutely right, Alan. You guys will be tagged with this as being the 93% that supported this, and people won't be happy.
So, just a comment from a person that doesn't make a whole lot of difference, especially in this new change, because it's obviously, you know, the mayors are, you know, expanding and so on, and the LSDs are, you know, their influence is going to be heavily diminished. What influence LSDs have now will be transferred to whatever towns they go to, hopefully, with representation and so on. So, personally, no, I'm not in favor of the way they've done it, but it's a moot point. It's a done deal, it's going through. So my advice to everybody, which is the same advice I gave to a small meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago, is first of all, look at it and see is there any advantages whatsoever to anybody that's either being amalgamated or left out or whatever, and if there are, seize on them and accept them. And part of the big problem that I see is they've gone against what they told us they were going to do. They were going to provide us with more democracy. No. We now have 9 seats. The LSDs have 9 seats. We're going to have 1 next year, and there's going to be 7 mayors. So there isn't anything we can do about that except to lobby for more representation in the next 6 months. So maybe something like that could get in the regulations, that instead of the rural district having only 1 seat, maybe they could have 2 or 3 or whatever. Look at you know, the numbers that they're using to determine how many rural councillors will be and so on, and look at your, you know, people within town and outside of town that may be joined. Look at how your town is going to be structured, and you know how that distribution is going to be, or that representation is going to be put to everybody's advantage. So those are the only things you can fight for right now. You cannot fight to get this stopped, because third readings either today or tomorrow, or it's coming. It's a done deal. So it's not a question of whether we're in favor of it or not, or what we should or shouldn't have done. And as far as the Service Commission putting out a petition, this is a Service Commission, it's not a government. So I don't really feel it's the mandate of a Service Commission to put out an opinion to the government on how they should govern. Our mandate here is to provide services. That's what the mandate is. It's not to take political opinions and whatever.
New services. We have a new mandate comes down to the commission. So who's gonna speak on behalf of the commission about what is offloaded to the commission? And
well, how can the whole commission speak for everybody? Because the district, the Service Commission is so diversified that everybody is not going to be, you know, have all the same thoughts, and everybody's
It
not
hasn't
going to.
happened here tonight.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very passionate about economic development. Short Raspberry passing about tourism. So we're already very concerned about those two big categories. You know, that's already happened.
But Al had the right answer a minute ago when he said, what's the solution? It doesn't matter, like, we may not necessarily have the same common goals or approach or anything else in Boca back on the shore that McCabin has. So, you know, you can't put a common front forward if you don't have a common front. So what is it? If you have one that everybody can agree on, then okay, you can put something forward. But just to have the Service Commission write a letter to the minister saying we're not in favor of this, you could toss that out. You know, you have to have solutions to go along with it. So, but anyway, you know, there's lots of things that could have been done better. There's a lot of things that they did that they basically, you know, lied to us when they said that, you know, forced amalgamation. It is forced amalgamation. No, I'm not in favor of that. I'm not against the amalgamation, but if it's going to work and if it would have been done with more consultation, like Dennis said, sure, but, you know, it's too late to, you know, for us to put out letters and opinions and everything right now. All we're doing is burning bridges. You know, we've got to go with Hollis and the focus and the task that he has that's been basically mandated to him by the government to say, there's transition teams coming here in January and this is what's going to happen. So that's where the focus has to be right now.
Yes.
But fight for.
I don't want to speak for Hollis, but I just want, just because he's not sitting here, this isn't his mandate. He's doing what he just went to Washington.
No,
that's what I just said.
No one's questioning what he's doing.
I just want to say that, you know, he's following the mandate he's given.
That's what I just said.
He's making
Yeah, I wasn't criticizing Hollis. I'm saying that, you know, as the executive director and as a board here, you know, the mandate has been given to this commission through Hollis, through this presentation. This is what they're expecting to happen. And it's going to happen. The transition teams will be coming here in January. So everybody has to look at what's missing that they might have a chance of getting changed through the regulations or whatever, and concentrate on that as opposed to trying to get the government to throw the whole thing out, because it's not going to happen.
I want to pick up on what Alan said about the fact that we are supposed to actually help this thing happening while at the same time undermining our opposition in the community. And it would be foolish to disregard the fact that a very large number in our constituents are very, very suspicious and against many of these things. So essentially the choice is coming, play along, and that will get us somewhere. While there is a real basis to actually state these things will not work, or they will be very difficult to work unless you put your hand deep in your pocket and you put some real money on the table. Okay? Now, these are contradicting things. I mean, you know, you have to decide, am I gonna keep that pie to watch it, or I'm gonna feed the dog? I mean, you cannot have both. And you know, if we actually completely give up on the fact that this is the goal, but maybe instead of going there, we have to go there. Who's gonna advocate?
You're saying everything that I just said. Everything, identical. There's no argument there.
Yeah.
The white paper is going through. It's being passed in the House. Okay? So, what you're saying about going through the regulations and making sure this works, and that works, and this doesn't work. If it doesn't work, tell them so at the transition period. But that's what you have to concentrate on. You can't concentrate on saying, let's get the whole thing thrown out. It's not going to happen.
I just want to echo, you're 100% right. Mayor Minto Chipman on CBC Radio made it very clear they do not support this. I have not heard anything since from them. I personally wrote a letter to Minister MLA. I copied my MLA, a neighboring MLA, and the department, and I haven't got a response. And my concerns as a municipality are a lot less than St. George Blocks Harbor right now. but there's no response. So the way that I look at it is we could say, don't do it. The reality is, to your point, they're doing it.
It's not a matter of playing along, it's a matter of doing what's being mandated.
So we have this
We're
team in
being left
place.
behind.
That's what, as a group, we've really got to drag our feet in, whoever that group is.
Yeah.
We got to put our feet in and say, that's not okay for us as a region. And that's where it is. But right now,
But to get a common
send a
front.
letter, you're not going to get a response.
No, to get a common front, you know, you would have to say here tonight that every mayor is opposed to this white paper, and that every LSD is opposed to it. That may not be the case. Can somebody tell me that that's the case right now? That all mayors are against this? And that all LSD chairs are against it? If that's the case, fine, send a letter along.
Well, two mayors did already. Two mayors did already.
Yeah,
Two mayors.
yeah.
One is sitting over there. Said, you know, not only we don't like it, but we need some time to be able to make our case.
That's 2 out of 18.
But if we step into it and we say, look, this is a fait accompli, it's happening, you're not gonna stop it. As far as I'm concerned, there's my marching orders. What my intent is, we sit down, we take a look at it with the transition team, and we try to make it work. To me, it's, I was gonna say an analogy to the military, but there's your target. It's up to you to figure out how you're gonna get there.
It's called damage control.
And
What is
logistics
it now?
will help you along the way. So it's one of those things, we're gonna try and limit the damage that's gonna happen
Fight
in
like hell for
the
what you can
potential
keep,
region.
you know.
We
Fight
work
like hell
together
for what you can keep,
and we
and
sort
don't
of,
let them take any more than, you know.
But you know, that's not a bad point, because I know, like, there's things that I can see that our LSD would benefit from. And I think the LSDs need to support the municipalities. I think it needs to be a symbiotic relationship there. I'm really against the way this was railroaded in. And I'd have no problem standing up and saying, you know, that we do not agree with the way this is done. We don't like some of the stuff that's in there. We don't know how it's going to turn out. So that publicly, we're on the record to say, this is not us doing this. We're going to make the best of it. We're going to do what we can to make sure we minimize any damage, and then at the end of this, we've got something that's workable. But we don't feel this was done right. We don't feel we were listened to, and we don't support this. It's just my opinion. Like, I'd have no problem signing a thing, putting it in the paper.
So you're saying, Brad, that Jim and Minto stood up and said they were against it?
They were on CBC radio 2 days after saying it doesn't work for their communities at all. They were brutal, like just,
Yeah, their MLA is actually standing up in the House trying to get that changed,
yeah.
I just had
which is
heard.
Chris Austin.
Chris Austin, yeah.
Chris Austin,
Yeah.
So, Chris, and I will say this, I don't mean to belittle myself and everyone else around us, but if you think for a moment a letter from us outweighs a letter from all the mayors of the cities,
Yeah.
you're greatly mistaken. We're not that big of a deal.
But it isn't about that. It's about letting the people in the region know that this wasn't us that did that to them. We weren't part and parcel to this whole process.
I
And
agree
that
with
would
Sam.
help.
I agree with Sam, it's a done deal. We just got it in January, February, we just gotta get the best we can for our areas. Representation is our biggest thing. We know that Penfield deserves a lot of representation, they get the biggest tax base. Beaver Harbor deserves representation. So we know we're gonna lose a lot of representation, but the government's not giving us any answers. We gave them a whole bunch of questions, and the answers we get back are generic, basically saying, we'll figure that out next year. The same as if you go buy a car, we'll figure out the payments in 6 months, and figure out, that's basically, that's kind of damage. So we just gotta get the best we can out of it. The biggest thing for me is I got a lot of people that work for our village. I gotta make sure that every one of those people have jobs afterwards. They're saying on paper everybody's gonna have a job. They don't say what they're gonna be doing, they say they'll have a job. So I gotta make sure that we get in January, February, that's.
Well, those are the things that you have to fight for.
Absolutely, exactly. That's the number one thing I'm fighting for, making sure I.
Representation is a big thing, like I said, with the rural, you know, St. Patrick's Day that I'm in. You know, we're being told now that we're gonna have 3 rural councilors, only 1 will sit on the board. But guess what? It's still an advisory committee. it's no different. We're not gonna have any authority to write to bylaws or
We're just
anything
going to
else.
become a super, one
It's just
super
a
LSD.
Super LSD with, as an advisory to the minister, no different than it is now. So, you know, if it's a done deal, what we have to try and fight for over the next 6 months is maybe 5 representatives instead of 3 with 2 on the board and 5 counselors or whatever. But again, when you have these volunteer LSDs, as we found out over the last 25, 30 years, it's hard to get 2 people to come to an LSD election, let alone 5 or 6.
But it's
So
important.
the government needs to to give a little more authority to that rural district, to make it a little more attractive for people if you want. But I agree with Wade, this will be an S show for people that are left behind, because the people in the country and the towns will be laying it all on us. But by the same token, I don't necessarily agree with writing a letter about it, but that is what can happen if we let it happen.
Sam, just on the more representatives, it's important to note that the white paper says that we'll be voting based on our population.
Yeah.
So, you know, look at Campobello, for example. They're gonna come sit around a table and have a 3% vote.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's a good point, because even if
how
we
much
get-
risk is that to a community?
Yeah.
Like, our economic development is mainly being done through a region, and I got a 3% vote at the
Yeah.
table?
No, that's not correct.
Because the white paper says that, it's a weighted vote.
You only have 3%, whatever the formula is when we're voting on a budget.
Well,
It doesn't say that in the
Our
white
votes
paper.
are all 1-to-1, no matter what, until we get to the budget, and
That's a change, or the white paper just says a weighted vote on the
It
RSC.
says a weighted vote.
It doesn't
It's
say
about
it's
population
budgets.
representation.
It doesn't specifically say about the.
oh, then that's not good. I mean,
No,
if that's the case.
that was one of the questions I had.
You're
and I'm
super
not gonna
powered.
respond.
But that's a good point, because if St. Patrick with 4,000 people, for instance, would have 4 times the voting power of say, McAdam with 1,000 or whatever, so it really doesn't make any difference. So if we had 6 people on the board, we're still only gonna have that percentage of the 4,000 people. Unless it's a simple housekeeping vote on something, then yeah, you know, the 50 plus 1. But, so it's kind of a catch-22. It would be nice to have more reps on the board, but if they're going a weighted vote based on population, there's 4,000 in that district, that's what you get.
That's what the white paper says.
So-
So in theory, 2 districts, and the 2 districts outreel the other 6.
2 would be better, yeah, so if you had
So
2
you have
districts.
6 against something, 2 for,
Yeah.
and it carries. Like,
Yeah,
there's concerns of that.
but you could take that rural district.
So at the meeting I was at on Friday, we electronically asked Ryan Donahue what the voting situation was for regional service commissions, because we were there. So on day-to-day decisions, it's 50% plus 1 with no weighting. Budget decisions is 2/3 with at least 51% of the population. Mandated service, it's weighted per regulation. So service delivery will be 50% plus 1 weighted. Setting of fees and borrowing is at 2/3. Voluntary services is weighted for regulation, but only those in service vote for anything to do with that. So, and that's 50% plus 1, or borrowing is 2/3 weighted. So what that means is, if you're not receiving a service, if it's a voluntary service, planning services, for instance, and there's a vote on the planning department, and you don't receive those services, you don't vote. You vote. So that's new. That's what Ryan sent us on Friday.
Did you get that right?
It will be in, I have a copy of the presentation. Get message to Ryan. That's my.
More double talk. If I can say one thing, because I hear from everybody saying that, if you cannot, I hate the word to use that expression. I think that says, if you cannot avoid an assault, just play back and enjoy it. I'm a bit more optimistic, and I say, we are going through, there is a mandate for the government to implement this, but we have an obligation to our constituents to actually say, we believe that this will not work, and this, we have to somehow start the process of actually giving real feedback, as opposed to just say, oh, let's grab whatever we can on the way out. I think there is something fundamentally wrong in that philosophy. We have an obligation when this team comes forward to say, hey, Blacks Harbor and St. George and Penfield, the only thing that we heard that actually make us a cohesive community is go Mariners. Well, you know something, many people don't buy into that. Just because we have a fine high school and we have go Mariners on the list of priorities that what makes us a community, that may not be the one that may actually make us work. And when it's going to come time to decide, you know, which road we're going to fix next year, and there is so much money in the budget between Blacks Harbor and St. George, all these things, like what joins us as an economic community with Blacks Harbor? That case has not been made yet. They say, oh, in the future we have to work all together. Nobody disagrees with that. But how we get to the future when there is this reality? Two existing municipalities that share no common boundary, and they're going to have to absorb a whole bunch of other LSTs, some of them with great populations and value will probably deserve much more than what they are getting now. The story has not been written yet. So to what extent we'll be able to shape the story or modify the model it should be part of our vision. So I just don't buy the thing that, yeah, we have to do all this. In fact, I mean, Holly there is great in actually putting out great communication tools. I mean, I saw the video that you made for our Mangan, it was excellent. It was like, it's very, very, very slick, very, very, very powerful communication. So this is a very nice statement. But how we get to that statement given the reality without having real commitments that there are going to be a whole bunch of pile of money on the table? These are real questions. So I mean, we cannot just say, okay, let's get whatever we can on the way out. I don't agree on principle with that approach. Somehow we have to be able to communicate that there is a day after, and we should be able to look beyond that day, beyond January 1st, 2023. That's my.
And with that, probably enough for this evening. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Greatly appreciate the input, a lot of good discussion, and I'm sure there will be a lot more discussion. We have one more point?
No, he just has to check to see if there's questions on.
Okay, sorry, yeah. You know, I was sitting there, John, you were talking, and how does it benefit everyone? And I was thinking, you know.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I won't go into it anymore.
I'll vote for adjournment.
Okay, thank you very much, John. We are adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, Hollis, none of us think you did this.
I'm telling
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, really? You don't know? Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.